Hey everybody, welcome. This is another episode of Round the Fire. I'm Kirk Dieter on EarthX, and I'm here. This is a special day because I get to talk to guys that I've worked with for a long time. I'm an outdoor writer, and in making stories, I get to work with the best photographers in the world, and two of the best that I've ever worked with are Tim Romano and Josh Duppleshane. So welcome, guys, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Kirk.
Thanks, Dieter.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, I'm going to dive in, ask you some questions about photography, but suffice it to say that you guys have shot all over the world, literally, and for some big outlets, from Smithsonian and National Geographic and ESPN and other places, and of course Trout Magazine. That's the biggest of all. But I only say that because I'm the editor. But tell me a little bit, Josh, I'll start with you, about your style. When you approach, if I were to say, Josh, what are you known for? What is your style of taking images?
So that's a great question. And I'd like to just say one thing about style is something, that develops over many years, right? If there's any younger photographers out there, filmmakers out there, that doesn't come quickly, and you want to force it at the beginning, and you want to be like X, Y, or Z, and you know that in your head, but really it doesn't develop. And I would go ahead and be willing to say it didn't develop for me until even 5-10 years ago. I've been doing this since I was 14, when I started the photography courses in our local high school, and I'm 40 now, if that has any reference point there, and been through a lot of iterations of this. But my style has always been very journalistic. It's been very documentary. It's been very simplistic. And that's kind of what I'm known for within my circle of, photographers that I run with. And it's why people hire you based on your style, right? And that's kind of, they know they can cut me loose. Probably the same goes for Tim, and even for you with writing, they can cut you loose, and they know what they're going to get, and when my editor hires me for, say, an ESPN shoot, or I do a lot of work with the NCAA in my former life, and I still do now. And one of the pleasures I have is that they never direct me at all, because they know the outcome of what I'm going to get. And I'm there for that specific reason.
Yeah, I agree with you from an author's perspective. My author's voice has kind of evolved over the years. It's fun sometimes to read things that I've written 20 years ago. And there are things that when I do that, I sometimes think, wow, that was cool. How did you, turn that phrase? That's a good one. Or sometimes I think, I wish I could have a do-over on that. But how about you, Timmy? What do you got going on style? And I'm going to add a question to the back end of that. Are there places that you like to work specifically, as Josh says, because they wrap around the style that you like to shoot most?
That's a tough question. I was more of an art school dork that kind of segued into the journalistic side of stuff. And I think my style I excel at is telling a story. I mean, I overshoot. I don't like telling a story with one image, although that would be concise and good. I overshoot and do it with a lot, but I feel like it's more comprehensive that way. I shoot all sorts of stuff, but I really like shooting people. So if I'm put in a situation where I'm around a group of people for more than a couple hours, not unlike a lot of people, stuff happens the longer you're with people. So I think you tell a better story and get better images the longer you're with people. So anytime I'm with a group of people for more than a day, I feel like things tend to get better with age, and better shots happen. Yeah. And I love shooting people, so that's my jam.
Okay, so.
And if I could add, even I've seen Tim work myself. In fact, my very first job with Trout Unlimited was over 8.5 years ago on the Green River with Tim Romano.
Yeah.
And I was tasked to go down there and tell the story of them telling the story of the Green River. Tim's a people person, and that's reflected in his own photography. And And I think, you know, if you're an introvert, it's a really tough space to be. And if you're willing to be in that uncomfortable, like I just met you kind of position, and I think the results show within your personality, less in your photography, is his personality has allowed him to do what he's able to do, whether it's on Christmas Island or the Green River or the Colorado River. His travels all over for any publication.
Yeah. So we've been on a couple shoots together. Tim, you know, Josh, we've worked together in other ways, but you know, I'm hoping when all this COVID stuff is behind us, we can get out and do a real shoot, like go to Alaska or Russia or something like that. It would be a great, it's something that I'm jonesing to do right now. That's for sure. So in that note, if you had a place that you could go shoot, or where you're jonesing to go to, that either you could be a return trip to some place that you really loved, or, you know, where's that going to be? Where's your dream trip?
I'm a big fan of domestic. I've always thought the best stories are within our own backyard, right? But so with that being said, you know, I'm obsessed with my local spaces, whether it's the Colorado River, the Green River, the Smith River, any of those places that we've worked in. The Grays River up in the Tri-Basin Divide in Wyoming is beautiful. I just wrapped up a film about that. But with that being said, I always pine after something that's unfamiliar to me. And you know, I've had my eyes set on Japan for years and years. And if I could go, my goal is to do a trout snowboard piece up in Japan at some point in time in my life. And I just need to find the correct resources to get me there. And yeah.
I know an editor.
Yeah. I have some contacts there that I just think there's some beautiful stories to be told there. That doesn't mean are they any better than the ones happening in the Tri-Basin Divide in Wyoming or on the Colorado? Maybe not. But I think when you approach, you know, a foreign country is always a different eye, right? You guys know it. You guys traveled internationally probably well before I ever did. I've shot in different places as well, in Germany and Costa Rica, Nicaragua, South America, and beyond. But you know, just your eyes change when you see something that's unfamiliar to you. So,
you know, and before you answer the question, Tim, I'll jump in and say, I'm very fortunate as a writer to go and see these places, but you raise a really cool point, and that is I'm never sad to come home. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful place. We live in Colorado, all three of us, but it's all, no matter where I've been, and, you know, seeing kangaroos and jumping along the banks of the river in Australia or whatever. It's always very gratifying to come home to a beautiful country that we have. And, you know, and we're also the envy of a lot of places in the world, not only for the geographic beauty that we have or the topographic beauty, but we also have public access to those places that far outstrips many other places in the world. And that's worth protecting. So didn't mean to dive in on you, Tim. How about you? Where are you going?
I'll literally go anywhere after the last year. Anywhere. I'm not kidding.
I got a garbage dump in Western New York, dude.
I'm in, man. I like Western New York.
You know, at the end of this, we'll make sure that we've got your contact information so somebody can send you to a garbage dump.
I want to come.
Yeah.
I mean, in all seriousness, if I could go anywhere just because I'm cooped up, it's somewhere. I mean, I've been really lucky to go to a lot of places, but I think we've talked about it before, Kirk. But I really like Christmas Island in the I guess it'd be the South Pacific. I'd go back there for a week and not bring a camera and just fish.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You got to bring a camera.
Maybe.
This pandemic has been hard on all of us who are in media, who, you know, travel and make stories. But it's also allowed me to get into my own library and work on some of the based at home products. Have you guys been doing a lot of editing and stuff like that, brushing up, doing some fine art stuff?
Yeah. I mean, my life is my kiddos at this point. So for me, I didn't let this moment slip past me. I didn't let documenting, you know, their daily go by the wayside, because, you know, someday when they figure out how to operate my 15 hard drive array, they'll go back and see some of the memories that they had, and I do it in my style. Like, I don't do it just on as a passing, as my wife would do it, right? I do it differently, and I do it the way I would practice if it was my own subject matter. So yeah, I'm refining. I'm also I use this time to buy lights and practice my lighting skills with them and things like that, and different video concepts, frankly. So yeah, it gives you that time to breathe, man. I mean, we all are just, I think we mentioned this prior, is we're all just so stacked on a daily, from, I would say, April to November, it's travel, travel, travel. We're moving, we're planning. We don't get that time to really think about or implement the ideas that we think about in those in-between places.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you guys, both of you, and I'll start with Tim on this one. You're out there, you see, you're photographing people, but you're photographing people in places. And through the lens, you've been able to see the impacts of people on certain landscapes and so forth. So I want to take a turn into conservation, and, what would you say is the biggest threat to the natural resources that we work in and see? Climate change,
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't ignore that. That's, I think, the biggest threat, because I mean, COVID's shown us that everything we love here, I think, has been used a lot more, for better or worse. And when you compound that with the effects of climate change, whether that's less snow, less water, more heat, there's less of it to go around, and the quality is unfortunately worse. And I'm talking about, I think in our world, and what we like to do is rivers and water. We all hunt, but yeah, I think climate change is obviously the biggest problem that we're going to face going forward by far.
And Josh, is it fair to say that you've seen through the lens more impact of climate change in the last 10 years than you did earlier on in your career?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all, like Tim said, we hunt and fish first and foremost, and photography and journalism and writing is our forte to bring that to life. And I think one of the things that I see, and that I'm seeing unfortunately repeated, is every time I go out, every single time, I'm not joking, I hear, well, this never used to be like this. Well, this isn't normally this way. And I've said it to friends and hunting partners and fishing buddies, is like, I can't take it anymore. Like, every time we go, it's, well, this fire never really, fire season never happens in November. Okay. And now it is. And we're staring down the barrel of this. Or even, hey, this Mother's Day hatch, maybe technically doesn't even happen on Mother's Day, or to the complexity it used to, right? And things are moving and things are changing, and whether that's through hatches, or if I'm sitting on a hillside hunting elk at 10,000 feet in November and it's 62 degrees and I'm eating a sandwich with a t-shirt on, that's really stark. You start to wonder, and you contemplate, or even the flows, right? Like Tim and Kirk, you guys have been on even just the upper Colorado, like we've talked about in the past. And in the past, we've seen flows upwards of 7,000 at the peak or higher. I ran it at 4,500, I think I told you, Tim, a couple years ago, and I thought that was just bonkers. And it's the fluctuations you're seeing now, right? And it's like, one year you're running at 4,500 in July, and the water's coming up over your raft, and you're laughing like a little kid in a candy shop. And then all of a sudden, the following July, which this year I'm running it at 800 in July. And it's those stark fluctuations in temperature and flows and bug life and things that are happening. They slap you right in the dang face. And I don't know how you avoid that. I don't know how you ignore that, rather,
Yeah, I'm really worried about the upper Colorado River based on what's happened this year with fires, unprecedented fires. I think you were telling me, Josh, that more acreage burned this year in that area than has burned in a century almost. So, Tim, what do you think is going to happen with the upper Colorado?
I mean, I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been out enough and watched fire here my whole life, and I've never seen anything like it. And I've been in areas where, our biggest fire until this year was the Hayman fire down south near where you live, Kirk, obviously. And I mean, that did massive damage to the South Platte. I don't think the South Platte ever really came back to not only the fishery that it was, but I mean, that they had real like drinking water issues for years and years. They had to redo their waste, you know, the intake plants. And I don't know, man, it's not going to be good. You strip out vegetation, rivers get hotter, you have rain events, sediment washes in, and some of that can be good. Like fire, you know, can be good for some ecosystems, but not a fire like that burns 100,000 acres in a day or 2 days or whatever it was. I mean, that is not the fire that you want.
Yeah, it was weird. And we're talking about the East Troublesome fire specifically. But what was interesting about that one is that it jumped the divide. In other words, it went up over tree line. And usually by the time of year that happened in late October, there would be sufficient snowpack that flames couldn't rise that high in the first place and then crest over the top of the mountains. And yet we saw that happen, and that's what made it burn so much.
That is the biggest natural barrier you could possibly think of for a fire, and it jumped it with ease.
Look,
Yeah.
I came from the great state of Ohio, the heartland, 18 years ago now. I moved to Idaho, packed it all up and headed out there. And when I heard and saw a fire when I moved out west, my first immediate reaction was how devastating, how terrible. And then I start to discover as I age, is fire isn't bad. It's the way we're managing some of these places, and it's a funding issue. It's figuring out how to live with this. And now as I do research for an article for you, Kirk, this summer in Trout Mag, I'm finding that people really need to figure out how to live with this, and they're understanding that these fires provide. They give back some of the biodiversity that is needed to these forests. So I get that. It's just the fact that we've, as humans, we've put our stake in the ground in some of these fire zones, and we need to protect that. People come first, right? And I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that, because if my house was on the line, I'd want some help. But I think we need to learn to live with this, and we need to learn to pivot a little bit on our behavior and what we do, and use our voices to speak up, to say, look, we want more money to go to the Forest Service, the BLM, all those places to understand that they need to mitigate these things or manage them as best as they can in ideal situations.
You raise a really good point there. And I think we all share this. It's a satisfaction. I mean, it's sometimes when we work and we come face to face with these realities, it's frustrating. And yet, on the other hand, we all go to work and we know that we're crusading, right? We're trying to make a difference. And I think that if I were just writing about widgets, or you were just taking food photographs, and it's a little bit different, the realm that we're in. Am I talking out of school here, or are you guys on board with that?
No, I was talking to my neighbors the other day about the East Troublesome fire, which people don't know, massive fire, burned like 500 houses, but it, like Kirk said, it jumped the divide into Rocky Mountain National Park. And I was lamenting, how sad I was about some of the stuff that burned. And sorry.
It's important. And
but my neighbors were kind of shaming me for talking about that. They said, oh, so what, the forest burned, or your river burned, your lake burned, people lost their houses, but it's personal to us. And I think it's important, as important as someone's house, maybe.
Yeah, it is. And houses can be rebuilt. That's why we're talking about it here. That's why I brought you guys, because I knew that you'd open up and talk about these things.
Pardon me.
I ask loaded questions. You know that. Let's cheer it up though, and say, let me ask you this question. And I have been to places. You're right, Josh, in that 80% of the time when you go somewhere, especially in the fishing context, you hear, oh, you should have been here when, or you would have seen, you couldn't believe what it was like back then, or whatever. But I have seen a handful of places that are better now because of the work and the attention that people have put in. And, you know, I'll give you some examples. You know, places in Alaska. We've just helped to preserve the Bristol Bay region from a proposed mine, you know, which would have been catastrophic. And, you know, that's a positive thing. Some of the runs, you know, on the Elwha River and the Elwha River in Washington, you know, we remove a dam and wild steelhead are coming back into those rivers. So it's better. I mean, we can make a difference. And it's like, that's the fuel that keeps me going anyway. And that it, you know, because if you're just banging your head against the wall, that's one thing. But if you're able to feel like you can make a difference, and we can, that's another thing entirely. So I mean, I'm wondering, Tim, would you echo that as well? Or
I think that's why we all do what we do, because we try to make a difference. I mean, I think you guys maybe do a little bit more than me working for TU, but yeah, we can make a difference and we can change things. And it's not all that complicated necessarily sometimes, you know? I think we build it up in our head like it's this huge thing that can't be done. And climate change is tough. That's a tough one, right? And it's sometimes it's hard to see that our little individual actions can have an impact on that. But in your area or a stretch of river or whatever, they most definitely can have an impact and help things.
That collective, Tim, is exactly what we need. And like, it's not up to me, it's not up to Kirk, it's not up to you to shoulder that. It's up to the collective. And there's great photographers, writers, filmmakers out there that are all chipping away at the block. And like, I think, you know, I think of, you know, people like, there's a group called Sea Legacy working on, you know, climate change and relationship to our oceans. And I think of other conservation orgs and individual photographers and filmmakers that are chipping away. And like, without the ability to show people the things that they may or may not be able to get to or see themselves, like, you know, that's a huge service that one can provide, that, you know, it's critical in moving the needle down the line, right? Like, we're not going to do this if people don't understand what's happening.
That's right.
For sure.
Let's talk about one other thing, and that's, you know, the next generation. If, you know, people say to me, Dieter, you've got the best job in the world, and, you know, going to different pretty places and writing stories about fish and wild spots and all that stuff is a great job. It's a lot of hard work though. I mean, I spend more time behind the computer and I edit and I've honed the craft for many, many years. You just don't jump in and do these things. If someone were to say, Tim, I want to be a photographer, I want to do what you do, what would your advice be to them?
Don't be sarcastic.
So hard though. It's just like anything else. Just put in the time, work your ass off. You know, I think endeavor, again, I'm beating a dead horse here, but I endeavor to tell a story instead of just a piece of one. And I think that's not something that's being done in media so much these days anymore. It's a one-hit wonder. I got this. Oh, I can do this. I think it really, you got to practice your craft. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It's not the most complicated thing to produce good media. You just have to practice a lot and go and do it. And don't sell your soul.
That's for sure. Josh, same question to you. If I want to be Josh Dupelshane, what do I have to do? What's my?
I'll leave the sarcasm out of there too. But you know, one of the things that I have a deep appreciation for now that I'm older is I was classically trained in a pretty hardcore journalism program, and they beat those skills into your brain, and they tell you how to do that. I wouldn't, if I had to do it all over again, I would have probably gone to school to be a wildlife biologist first and then a photographer second. Really, to be good at what you do and good at photography specifically, or filmmaking, is to really understand your subject. And I've had to do a lot of catch up. I've had to backpedal and understand what I'm doing, because pushing buttons and getting exposures right and compositions and audio and all that other noise that comes with it is really irrelevant in my world compared to the basic knowledge of the subject matter at hand. And Tim made a great point earlier, and I joked on him for it. He would go to Christmas Island without his camera. Well, that means because Tim's an angler, and he's an angler to the core, which means that he understands every component of angling first, and then photography aids him in doing it the right way, which means that if he needs to leave his camera behind to be a better angler, or if I need to leave my camera behind to climb a mountain or whatever it may be, to understand the base first is more important than understanding photography. It's almost like putting the cart before the horse in a lot of ways. And if I had to go back, they did not train us that way. And I regret that in a lot of ways too. So
some of my favorite stories that I've written, there wasn't a computer within 100 miles of me. You know what I mean? And I'm writing them in my head. You write them in the river, and then you remember them, and they stick. And so,
well, the same applies to you, Kirk. I mean, you're an angler first and foremost, and the writing, man, just comes from your experience.
Boots in the water matter, right?
You create your own luck. But the industry itself is very competitive, and to do this in writing or filmmaking or photography, you can't settle for being second place. I hate to say that. Like, you have to bust your butt. You have to work at all times. And I did that in my early years, and I'm doing it now. Thankfully, I can really hone that now that I'm a little busier with kids and families and jobs and things like that. But really, to put your all into it, is an understatement. I lived in college and after college, even in newspaper world, up at the Rocky Mountain News, I put my entire life into it. I gave up holidays, I gave up family gatherings, I gave it all up because I believed that this was my path and being the best I can be, which led me to you, Kirk, which led me to Trout Unlimited, which led me to all the other clients that I may have gotten along the way.
Well, guys, I think on those notes, here's hoping that we can get together in person soon. We've had a virtual around the fire chat here today, but we're going to do a real around the fire out by a river sometime, hopefully very, very soon. And thanks a lot for all you do. Thanks for being good friends, and you guys take care. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate you both.
Likewise, gentlemen.
We are sportsmen, and we are in trouble. We've learned what happens when we underestimate a serious threat. We can't make that same mistake with climate change. We need to stand up for America and for our kids and grandkids. Make your voice count in 2020.